We need to talk about the comforting lies we tell ourselves at funerals. You know the one. You're standing there, heartbreak in your chest, and someone puts a hand on your shoulder and says, "Don't worry, now you have a new guardian angel watching over you." It is a beautiful sentiment. It feels safe. It makes the finality of death feel a little less cold. But here is the hard truth that almost nobody wants to hear. That idea is completely wrong. It is a fabrication that has absolutely no basis in the ancient texts that actually define what an angel is. And frankly, the reality of what is guarding you is far more terrifying and far more complex than a deceased relative with a new pair of wings. We are going to deconstruct the 5 biggest myths about these celestial beings, starting with the biology of the spirit realm. There is a pervasive belief that humans and angels are just different stages of the same evolutionary line. That when you die, you graduate. You get a promotion, a harp, and a white robe. But biblically speaking, this is like saying that if a dog is really good, it dies and becomes a human. It's an ontological impossibility. Scripture presents humans and angels as entirely distinct species of existence. In the book of Job, when God is grilling Job about the origins of the universe, he describes the moment the earth's foundation was laid, saying, "The morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for." That means angels existed before humanity was even a concept. They were the audience before we were the actors. Christian theology reinforces this separation. When humans die, the belief is that souls enter communion with God, perhaps joining the great cloud of witnesses, but they remain fundamentally human. They do not morph into a different class of creature. The comfort of "grandma is my angel" is a modern emotional coping mechanism, not a spiritual reality. And while we are dismantling the imagery, let's look at the physical appearance of these beings. If I ask you to picture an angel, your brain probably defaults to a Renaissance painting, a porcelain-skinned figure, maybe a chubby baby with tiny wings, or a serene woman holding a lily. You are visualizing a mascot, not a warrior. If you actually read the descriptions in the Bible, you are looking at something closer to a Lovecraftian nightmare than a greeting card. The prophet Ezekiel recounts a vision of the cherubim. And forget the chubby babies. These are high-ranking guardians of God's throne. He describes beings with 4 distinct faces: a human, a lion, an ox, and an eagle, all on one head. They have 4 wings. They sparkle like burnished bronze, and they are accompanied by wheels within wheels that are covered in eyes. It is a vision of absolute alien terror. This is why, almost every single time an angel appears to a human in the Bible, the very first words out of their mouth have to be, "Do not be afraid." They have to say that, because the natural human reaction to seeing an angel isn't comfort. It is trauma. It is the collapse of the nervous system. When the guards at Jesus' tomb saw the angel, they didn't smile. They shook and became like dead men. When Daniel saw one, he lost all his strength and fell face down in the dirt. These are beings of raw, unadulterated power and lightning. The halo? That's not even in the text. That was an artistic invention borrowed from Greek and Roman iconography to signify divinity. We have domesticated these lions into house cats because the reality of their power is too overwhelming for us to process. Now, there is a cynical argument out there, usually from the hyper-literal crowd, that claims the entire concept of a guardian angel is fake, because that specific 2-word phrase doesn't appear in the Bible. And technically, they are right about the vocabulary, but they are dead wrong about the concept. You don't need the title to have the job description. The evidence for personal angelic assignment is surprisingly robust. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus issues a warning about how we treat children, stating, "See that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I tell you that in heaven their angels always see the face of my Father." Note the possessive pronoun. They're angels. It implies a specific one-to-one correlation between a human and a heavenly counterpart. We see this play out in a bizarre, almost comedic scene in the book of Acts. Peter has just been broken out of prison by an angel. Chains falling off, iron gates opening on their own, and he runs to a house where his friends are praying for his safety. He knocks on the door, and the servant girl is so shocked she forgets to let him in and tells the group, "Peter is at the door!" The group doesn't believe her. They say, "You're out of your mind." And when she insists, they offer a different explanation. It must be his angel. This reveals a fascinating default setting in the early church mindset. They believed so strongly in personal angelic duplicates that they thought it was more likely Peter's spiritual double was knocking at the door than Peter himself. So yes, the specific job title might be a later invention, but the function is woven into the earliest DNA of the faith. But this leads us to the most dangerous misunderstanding: the confusion about their authority. People treat guardian angels like cosmic genies or spiritual bodyguards who can override reality to keep us safe. You hear people say, "My angel saved me from that crash." Maybe, but we have to understand the rules of engagement. Angels do not override free will. They are not puppet masters. They can influence, they can whisper, they can guide, and they can physically intervene when sanctioned by God. But they cannot force you to take the right path. They are like a GPS. They can show you the route. They can recalculate when you miss a turn, but they cannot reach over and turn the steering wheel if you are determined to drive off a cliff. Furthermore, there is a strange modern trend of praying to angels, asking them for money, love, or protection. This is a theological short circuit. In the Bible, angels are aggressively anti-worship. In the book of Revelation, when John is overwhelmed by the apocalypse and falls down to worship an angel, the angel immediately rebukes him, effectively shouting, "Stand up! Don't do that! I am a servant just like you. Worship God." Angels are the delivery drivers, not the chefs. You don't thank the truck for the package. You thank the sender. They operate under a strict chain of command, hearkening to the voice of his word. They don't have their own agenda. Finally, let's address the deepest fear: abandonment. There is a lurking insecurity that if we sin too much, if we stray too far, or if we ignore the promptings of our conscience long enough, our guardian angel will just quit. We project our own human fragility onto them. We think, "I would give up on me, so they must want to give up on me too." But angels are not humans. They do not get tired. They do not get frustrated. They do not suffer from burnout. The book of Hebrews defines them as ministering spirits sent to serve. That word "sent" implies a mission that is not dependent on the worthiness of the recipient. It is dependent on the command of the sender. The Catholic Catechism puts it beautifully, stating that from its beginning until death, human life is surrounded by their watchful care and intercession. Notice the timeline. Until death. They are the ultimate professionals. They are bound to you not by your performance, but by divine decree. You cannot annoy them away. You cannot sin them away. You can ignore them. You can silence their influence in your life, but you cannot make them leave their post. They are the silent sentinels standing watch over a sleeping world that largely doesn't believe they exist, or worse, thinks they are just imaginary friends. The truth is, you are being guarded by ancient, terrifyingly powerful warriors who have looked upon the face of God and yet are assigned to watch over you. That is not just comforting, that is profound.